Welcome to the IVM Podcast Network. Hi, this is Amit Doshi, and I wanted to thank each and every one of our listeners. It's been 2 years since I founded IVM, and it's been an amazing 2 years. We wanted to learn a little bit more about who is listening to our shows, and so we put together a short survey. The survey is anonymous, and we aren't going to be collecting any personal information. I would really appreciate it if you could take a couple of minutes out of your day and go to ivmpodcast.com/survey and fill it out. Thanks, and please keep listening.
Who's ahead in the league and what's cooking off the pitch? We at TFG bring all that you need to know about Indian football. Discussions, debate, banter, in-depth analysis with a touch of fun and fandom. This is the TFG Indian Football Podcast, and we're a daily show, so check us out on YouTube and various other podcasting apps like iTunes, Audioboom, SoundCloud, etc.
You're listening to the On Course Podcast.
Hi everyone, welcome to the On Course podcast. On Course is a creative and alternate education company that aims to bridge the gap between formal classroom education and real-world skills. We offer a range of programs from short skill-based courses to test prep to application assistance for those looking to study abroad. My name is Alisha Mashruwala and I'm the CEO of On Course. And today I have with me Ashna Nasta, who is our senior associate at On Course and the head of test prep as well. Hi Ashna.
Hi Alisha.
Welcome to the show. So today we're going to be talking about the IB, the International Baccalaureate Program. So Ashna, lots of talk about the IB. A lot of kids, a lot of parents want to know about the IB, what it is. So what is the IB in fact?
So the IB is actually short for the International Baccalaureate, which is a board available to students actually right from first grade. And in the 11th and 12th grade, which has become popular now, it's the IBDP, which is a diploma program. And I would say in the last 8 to 10 years, it has gained much popularity in India. And to make it easy, the IB is actually a holistic board that encompasses academic as well as non-academic stuff, which is good for the students to learn at an early age. So be it subjects from the languages and sciences and humanities to actually going out there and doing creativity and action and sports, IB includes everything.
So like you said, it starts as early as first grade. And I think a lot of schools in India have now started incorporating it at a younger age as well. But I think it's still predominantly the IBDP that, everyone wants to know about and everyone's talking about, right?
Yes.
So what are the subjects that students typically would choose in an IBDP in grade 11?
So unlike the Indian system, which is divided into art, science and commerce, the IB has a very different way of grouping their subjects. So they have 6 main groups. They have English, which is the first language. They have the second language, which is typically Hindi, French and Spanish. Then they have the sciences, which include physics, chem, biology, environmental sciences. Then they also have the social sciences, which is economics, history, geography, business, psychology. Then they have the math. And finally, they have the arts, which is visual arts and drama. And what's even better over here is that you don't just choose 6 random subjects, but you choose 3 at higher level and you choose 3 at standard level. So typically the subjects you want to study in more depth or the subjects you're planning to pursue later in life are the ones you would take at a higher level, whereas the other 3 you would take at a standard level. So the fact that it's compulsory to take a language, to take a math, to take a science, the IB is ensuring that you try out all different fields before you decide what you want to study in college.
And even at the standard level, is someone required to take something like art, music, if, they feel like they're not very sure that's something that they might want to pursue at all?
So the 6th group, which is the arts, is actually the optional one. If you decide not to take the arts or not pursue art or drama, then you can take a second science or a second social science. Say, for example, you're someone who's always wanted to pursue engineering in college. So typically what you would take would be a physics, chemistry and math at higher level. And you would take your English, second language, as well as a social science at standard level.
So it's a fairly wide range. So even for someone who does want to do science, it's not like they have to only take the science-related subjects.
Exactly. You will still be forced to take the second language and the social science as well.
And how does grading typically work in the IB? Because I've heard, you hear people talking about 38s and 40s. And, how does that differ from your Indian grading system, which is a fairly simple percentage scale?
So while your Indian system is on 0 to 100, the IB is actually on total of 45 points. And the way it is graded within the 45 is that each subject you choose can get you a maximum of 7 points. So you have 6 subjects of 7 points each, which gives you 42. Which brings me to the remaining 3 points that brings out the non-academic side of the IB. So those 3 points are your extended essay, theory of knowledge, and CAS. So the extended essay is actually a 4,000-word essay that you write across those 2 years on any one topic on any subject of your choice. Then TOK, or theory of knowledge, is a subject a lot like philosophy, where you question everything around you. Like, does God really exist? Is the world really round? And stuff like that, where you finally do a presentation and a report on which you're graded. So the TOK and extended essay, each one gets a grade from A to E, combining which gives you a score on 3. But to avail of that 3, you also have to ensure that you finish a minimum number of hours in creativity, action, and service, which is called the CAS.
So what do you mean by creativity, action, service? So what counts as each of these headings?
So creativity, say for example, you're fond of playing a musical instrument like the guitar. So you would have to complete maybe 80 to 100 hours of guitar across the 2 years. Action would be a sport. So it could be anything, football, volleyball, golf, whatever you're interested in. And finally, service is community service. So whether you want to go volunteer somewhere, whether you want to start your own initiative, whether you want to do fundraising, however you want to do it, that's up to you, as long as you do it.
So I guess with the IB, it's fairly rigorous as well, because a lot of students are taking 6 subjects, plus they've got the extended essay, TOK, and the creativity, action, and service. So a lot of time goes into that. How does it differ in terms of learning style from, say, the ISC or the HSC?
So in terms of learning style, the IB is a lot more hands-on. So for example, let's take English. When you're doing English in ICSE or ISC, typically the way the questions are structured is who said this to whom, where did the scene take place, what is the author trying to convey in this scene. It's very factual about what happened in the book, whereas the IB makes you analyze and forces you to think critically. So typically in IB, the question would be one question, like say, how is the author trying to portray feminism in this book? And that's it. You have 500 words to write however you want, whatever you want, and you can give your viewpoint. There is no right and wrong over here. It's about how you think the author is trying to portray it and how are you going to justify it.
So very different from, what you've studied through ICSE.
Absolutely.
So do you feel like kids who do the ICSE and finish grade 10 and then move into the IB, are they able to transition fairly easily, or does that take them a little while, given that the entire learning structure is very different?
So adapting to the learning style does take time. So the first couple of months is a transition period. And the best way to overcome the transition period is to use that summer wisely between your ICSE and IB. You typically have a good 4 to 5 months before the IB starts. So whether it's to get a good grasp on your reading, to try different ways of approaching math, or say if you know what science you're going to do, maybe try reading outside of the curriculum for the sciences. But the more you read and the more you explore the subjects, the better you'll be fit for the IB.
And how much does it vary in terms of the difference between a higher level subject and a standard level subject? So say if I'm doing higher level biology versus standard level biology, or higher level economics versus standard level economics.
So I would say the difference is varying from subject to subject. In the sciences, the difference is more because you're doing a lot more topics at higher level. In fact, you're doing a third optional paper as well at the higher level, where you pursue topics you would not have studied at standard level. Whereas in economics, psychology, or any other social science, the difference is not so much, because typically the content you're studying in higher level also helps you to understand your standard level concepts. So while you may not be tested on that, you're still studying the higher level part as well.
Okay. And so who do you think should do the IB? Who is a good fit for the IB program in general?
So while it's very difficult to categorize a certain kind of student who can fit into the IB is really good for those who don't want to restrict themselves to textbook learning, the ones who really want to go out there, read more than what's required, try out a whole bunch of subjects, want to actually explore sciences, social sciences, humanities, everything. It's very good for them. Someone who's actually 100% sure about what they want to study, especially want to stay back in India, let's say engineering or medicine, for example, should not do the IB because something like the HSC might be more suitable for them.
Yeah, and I guess that brings me to my next question, which is essentially if you're doing the IB, can you stay back in India? Do colleges accept it or do you have to go abroad?
So let me talk about the ones where it's better not to do the IB. So let's take engineering, medicine and law, the three fields which I feel if you are planning to do in India, IB may not be the best idea for you. Mainly because there are entrance exams involved over here and those entrance exam dates clash with the IB. What happens with something like engineering, the syllabus for the entrance exams also is a lot more similar to the Indian system than what you're studying for the IB. So even if you decide, okay, I will give the entrance exam and my IB exam at the same day, you might be studying two very different things, which again will lead to average results in both of them. One way to go around that is to take a gap year. So you can give your IB at the end of grade 12 and the year after that give the entrance exam. The same can be done for medicine and law as well. But if you look at all the other fields like say a BA, a BCom, a BMS, BMM, all those fields are still open for you in India, even if you do the IB, because what happens is when you get your IB predicted score, you can get a Mumbai University conversion into the Indian system. Say, for example, you get like a 40 on the IB, they will convert it to say approximately a 90% and give you an Indianized version of your transcript with which you can apply to the Indian colleges.
Yeah, because I guess you get your IB results fairly late as well. So when you get your IB results, by then colleges in India have already started. So it's fairly important to get the predicted results and get that converted from Mumbai University.
Yes.
And do you feel like the IB is sort of one of those boards where when you apply abroad, they look at it more favorably than, say, an Indian board or the A-levels or any other program for that matter?
Actually, not at all. What the colleges really look out for, whether US or UK, is how well you've done in whichever board you've taken. So when you're applying, there's no criteria saying that you need to take an international board, whether IB or A-level. They want to see is how you scored. So say you've scored a 95% in ISC or you scored a 42, 43 in the IB. They're going to take you at par. They're not going to give you extra credits just because you took the IB.
So in that sense, it's probably better to just take the course or the board that's better fit for you.
Absolutely. Take the one you're most comfortable with. Take the one you're most likely to score in.
Fair enough. And what are some of the schools here that offer the IB? And, what is the process, say, for someone who's in grade 10 now, when they want to apply for the IB or get into an IB program? How do they have to go about it?
So actually currently the list of IB schools in Bombay is really long. So whether it's Dhirubhai Ambani, Ecole Mondiale, Jamnabai, BD Samani, Hill Spring, Bombay International School, these are the popular ones, but there are also dozens of other schools you can look at. In terms of the application process, it starts this year itself. So by end July, most of the schools will give out their forms. Some give it out online. Some you have to go to the school physically to take it. After submitting the form, there's typically an entrance exam and an interview, only after which an admission offer is made to you. And there isn't any particular timeline. Each school does it when they want to. So the best would be to keep in touch with the school websites and see when the dates are going to be out.
So given that anyone who is currently in grade 10 wants to apply for an IB program, they should start kind of looking at it as early as June, July of this year, right?
Yes.
And what is the entrance exam like? What do they have to prepare for it?
So there isn't an actual preparation for the entrance exams. Anyone who's doing well in school in terms of whether it's ICSE or IGCSE should be fine with the entrance exams because they do test you in 9th and 10th standard stuff. Sometimes it's science, it's math, it's English. It's more like an aptitude test just to see how well suited you are for the IB.
Okay, so it's still fairly easy and doable for someone, especially since every school has a separate exam. Kids will be running around and taking exams all the time.
Yeah, it's absolutely okay to go and give these exams without any formal preparation. Whatever you've learned in school so far is enough to help you with these exams.
And there's a lot of talk going about not just on the IB diploma, but just the IB certificate as well. So what is the difference between an IB diploma and an IB certificate?
So in the IB certificate, you don't have to do the extra part of the IB. So there's no theory of knowledge, no extended essay, and no CAS involved over here. You will still do those 6 subjects with 3 at higher level, 3 at standard level. But because you're not doing the extra part, they expect you to focus more on your academics and get your scores over there. In terms of university acceptance, it's always better to check with the university whether they're accepting the IB certificate, because this changes from college to college and even course to course, as not all colleges are accepting of the IB certificate.
And I guess especially in India, where if you do want to even consider that option of staying back, it becomes very hard if you're doing the IB certificate to stay back in India, or to even look at colleges in maybe the UK or Singapore for that matter.
Absolutely, yeah. All the colleges definitely give higher weightage to IB diploma over IB certificate. There are a handful of colleges in these countries that allow it. But even in India, it's better to stick to the IB diploma, because when the IB certificate conversion happens, it's significantly lower than the IB diploma conversion.
Okay. And do you feel like there's a lot of talk going around, in terms of the A levels now also, so the difference between the IB and the A levels? What is the A levels?
So the A levels is actually a UK-based board which has been around for decades now. And it's not that popular in India, which is why people don't talk about it as much. The A level is actually a more academically rigorous version where you do 3 to 4 subjects of your choice. They don't have any set group, so you're not forced to do a second language. You're not forced to do a science or a math. You can take subjects as you wish. For example, say you're interested in the commerce field and you take business, economics, English, and math, because those are subjects you like. You're totally skipping the science section over here. You're totally skipping the second language here. But these 4 subjects you will study in depth. In terms of rigor, I would say it's as rigorous as your IB higher level subjects, but you have more time on hand over here to study these subjects. And in terms of ways of learning the subject, it's more similar to the IB than ISC. You still have your projects, you still have the application-based case studies, but it's not that hands-on.
Okay, so essentially they're completely different international boards, and when kind of taking a decision on whether someone should actually move to an international board, I think it's fairly important for any student to think about, the rigor of the IB in terms of time management. Do you think that's one of the key aspects of it?
Yes, the time management is actually the biggest problem that IB students face, because there's so much going on. And besides coping up with the IB, they're also doing their other projects and they're also doing college applications. So it's very, very important to start scheduling right from the day you start the IB.
And within the IB as well, they have a few internal assessments. So what are the internal assessments? How is that graded? Or what does a student typically do to prepare for it?
Again, internal assessments are different from subject to subject. So say math, for example, you have something called a math exploration project, where you take a math topic which is totally outside of your curriculum, explore it further and see a real life use for that. So you make that whole project and you submit that to the IB. Whereas with the sciences, your internal assessments are actually your lab work. So you clock in certain hours in the lab and you do different types of labs, write the reports for those types, and again, submit those lab reports. With your languages, there's also an oral component which is recorded and sent to the IB. So while the internal assessments differ from subject to subject, each and every subject in the IB has an internal assessment, which finally reduces the weightage of the final exam in the IB. So by the time you go for the final exam, typically 30 to 40% of your score is already in your hand.
Okay, that's interesting. So what advice would you give any student who's currently doing the IB or planning to do the IB or wants to do the IB?
Manage your time well. That's the most important thing. Right from the first week, make sure you have a calendar. Make sure you make a timeline of all your assignments. Make sure you decide when you're going to actually complete those assignments, and don't ever think about doing it last minute. You won't finish it.
Great. Thanks so much, Ashna. It's been great having you on the show.
Thanks, Alicia.
So I think that was a really insightful discussion about the IB. For anyone who wants more information, or if anyone would like to get in touch, you can find us on Facebook or Twitter. You could also email us on info@oncourseglobal.com or visit our website www.oncourseglobal.com.
Hey man, just help me out, man. I need some podcasts, man. I haven't had a fix in a week. Just need some.
Don't you worry about it. I got podcasts galore for you, man. Just go to ivmpodcast.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Thanks, man. I'm gonna check it out.